The judge said guilty before I finished saying please. Cameras flashed. My mate didn't look up. And somewhere in that white-hot silence, I felt our bond snap like a wishbone, the bigger half staying in his hand. The cuff bit into my wrist before the verdict finished landing. I remember everything in pieces. The cold ring of the bailiff's cologne, the squeak of my own sneakers as they turned me toward the door, the way my heart kept beating, stupid and steady like it hadn't been informed yet. 6 counts of conspiracy against the Crown Pack, treason, attempted poisoning of the Alpha King, me, Ren Calloway, the Omega who burned the toast that very morning and cried about it because the kitchen scent reminded him of his dead mother. I tried to find Damian in the gallery, my mate, my husband, the Alpha King of the Hartwell Pack draped across half of upstate Connecticut like a slow, expensive shadow. He sat in the front row in a charcoal suit I picked up for him last winter. His jaw was set, his hands were folded, his eyes did not lift. Not when they read the sentence, not when I said his name, not when the woman behind him touched the back of his neck, light as a moth, and let her fingers stay. I'd never seen her before, soft auburn hair, a face like a hymn. He didn't move her hand away. That was the moment my knees almost went. Not the verdict, that. A bailiff said something gentle. Pack courthouse bailiffs are trained to be gentle with Omegas. We bruise, apparently. We embarrass the institution by sobbing in nice acoustics. I didn't sob. I laughed once, ugly, surprised at myself, and then I let them walk me out. The press wall was a wall of teeth. I almost stopped to tell that last one he wished. Marcus Hale had a face like a closed door and the personality of a parking ticket. But sass is a luxury, and I was officially out of those. Somebody yelled, "He looks guilty," and somebody else yelled, "He looks pretty," and I decided right there, somewhere between the second flash and the squad car guard door, that whoever had done this to me was going to learn what pretty could do with a long memory. The drive to Brier Hollow Correctional took 93 minutes. I counted because counting was something that still belonged to me. 2 states over, in a different kind of cage, the Alpha King was getting married. I wouldn't know that for 3 years. In the courthouse, after they took me, he stood. He walked past the woman with the auburn hair. He went into the small private room reserved for Crown Pack family, and he locked the door behind him. He sat down on the edge of a leather couch he had sat on as a boy. He did not cry. Alpha Kings of the Hartwell line did not cry, especially not the ones who had just watched their mate get sentenced to 15 years for trying to poison them. He pulled out his phone instead. He opened the last text I'd ever sent him. "Bring milk on your way home, the good kind. I love you, you stubborn man." He read it again. He turned the phone face down on his knee and pressed the heel of his hand into his eye so hard his vision went white. He told himself the evidence was overwhelming. He told himself his advisors were right. He told himself an Omega could lie with a smile soft as Sunday. He told himself the soft auburn-haired girl waiting outside, the one his counsel had been pressing him toward for months, was nothing. He told himself a lot of things in that small room. He believed almost none of them. But he was a king, and kings don't apologize. They move forward. They make alliances. They marry the daughter of the pack that backed his evidence, and they smile at the cameras, and they go home alone to a house that still smells, faintly, fadingly, of bergamot and burnt toast. That's him. I'm telling you about him so you understand the shape of the man who is going to spend 3 years learning slowly that he sentenced the wrong Omega. The transport van smelled like bleach and somebody else's fear. I pressed my forehead against the cold metal door and tried not to think about Damian's hands. The way they used to find the back of my neck when I had a nightmare. The way he'd whisper, "I've got you, baby, I've got you. Liar. Liar," with a kind voice. My fingers grazed the bench beneath me, accidental, and the world cracked open. A flash, not memory, someone else's. A woman's gloved hand pouring something pale into a teacup. A man laughing softly behind her, the Hartwell crest stitched on his cuff. I yanked my hand back so fast my elbow hit the wall. I had not used my gift in 8 years. I had buried it the day my mother died because the last thing she'd touched was the steering wheel, and I never wanted to feel anything like that again. Psychometry, the pack doctors called it. Reading the histories of things. The bench had a history. The bench had been sat on by whoever framed me. Somewhere in the dark of that van, in handcuffs, in a future I had not agreed to, I started to smile. Slow, mean, like a candle catching. I didn't know her name yet, but I knew her hands. And I had 15 years to learn the rest. The smile was still on my face when the van stopped. I didn't let it drop. I'd decided, somewhere between the bench and the bleach, that whoever was waiting for me at Brier Hollow was going to meet the version of Ren Calloway that had nothing left to lose, and a brand new attitude problem. The back doors opened, sodium light. Cold air that smelled like wet asphalt and pine. Calloway, out. The guard had a neck like a fire hydrant. I slid down off the bench, ankles still chained, and gave him my brightest courtroom smile, the one that had made the prosecutor's eye twitch. Wow. They sent the welcoming committee. I feel famous. He didn't answer. They never do, the first night. Brier Hollow was a privately contracted facility tucked into the hills outside Litchfield. All gray brick and chain link, wrapped in ivy, that somebody had probably planted to make it look less like a place people died in. I clocked 3 guards, 2 cameras, 1 chapel bell that probably hadn't rung in a decade. I clocked something else, 2 scent, not the building, not the guards. Underneath all of it, faint and chemical, somebody had recently sprayed neutralizer along the intake gate. The kind they used to mask an alpha's signature so an omega coming in fresh wouldn't recognize anyone he wasn't supposed to recognize. Interesting. Why would a state correctional facility need to scrub the air for me? Move, the hydrant said. I moved. I'd argue with him later. I had 15 years. They walked me down a corridor lit like a bad dentist office. Every step, my hand brushed the wall, half by accident, half because the bench in the van had cracked something open inside me that I wasn't sure I could close again. I felt nothing from the cinder block. Cinder block didn't remember. It was a relief. Then the corridor turned and I felt him before I saw him. It wasn't scent. The neutralizer had scrubbed scent. It was the air pressure, the way a room changes when someone in it is bigger than the room. He was leaning in the doorway of the warden's office like he owned the lease. Charcoal coat. Boots wet from the rain I hadn't noticed falling. The flash of a Hartwell signet on his right hand, but smaller than Damian's, set in white gold instead of yellow. The kind of detail you only notice if you've spent 5 years memorizing every man in your husband's family because your husband kept introducing them at galas and you kept being polite. Cassian Hartwell. Damian's younger half-brother, the one who lived in Aspen. The one who didn't come to the wedding. The one the family talked about in the voice usually reserved for tumors. He looked up from his phone like I'd kept him waiting. You're shorter than I remember. I stopped walking. The chains clicked against my ankle. You're more present than I remember. Last I checked, you skipped my wedding. Last I checked, your wedding skipped the part where the groom believed his vows. I felt that one in my teeth. I gave him the smile anyway. The mean one. The candle one. You here to gloat, or did Damian send you to make sure I got tucked in? He pushed off the doorframe. He was tall in the way the Hartwell men were all tall, like somebody had stretched them for height and forgotten to add warmth. But his eyes weren't Damian's. Damian's were the color of good whiskey and self-control. Cassian's were paler, wolf pale. The eyes of an alpha who had stopped pretending to be domesticated a long time ago. Damian doesn't know I'm here, he said. Quiet. And if you have any sense at all, Omega, you won't tell him. The hydrant guard cleared his throat. Sir, intake processing requires 5 minutes, Cassian said without looking at him. Step out. The guard stepped out. I lifted both eyebrows. Wow, that's a neat trick. Do you do birthdays? Calloway. Wren, I corrected. If we're going to have a secret meeting in a hallway, at least use the first name. He took 1 step closer. The pressure changed again. My Omega instincts, the ones I'd been told all my life to listen to, started screaming 2 completely different things at the same time, running closer. I hated both of them. Wren, he said. His voice did something I wasn't ready for. It landed in the bottom of my stomach like a stone dropped down a well, and I felt the ripple all the way out to my fingertips. I covered it with a smirk. Better. He was studying my face. Not the way Damian had studied it, like a portrait he owned. The way somebody studies a door they think might be a wall. You didn't do it, he said. Not a question. The hallway went very quiet. That's a fun theory, I said, carefully. You want to share it with the judge? I want to share it with you. His jaw worked. 3 weeks ago, I told my brother the evidence didn't add up. He told me to mind my own pack. Loyal of him. He's terrified, Wren. Of me? Of being wrong. I laughed. It came out sharp and unfunny. Well, tell His Majesty congratulations on the new wife. I hope she pours his tea more carefully than I did. Cassian's hand moved before I could track it. He didn't touch me. He reached past my shoulder and pressed something small and warm into my palm, folding my fingers shut around it. Don't open this until you're alone. The second my skin closed over the metal, the world cracked again. A flash. His flash this time. Cassian in a dark study, looking down at a folder. A woman's gloved hand. The same gloved hand from the van. Sliding a photograph across a desk. A photograph of me, asleep in my own bed, my mouth open, completely unaware. I yanked back so hard the chains rattled. What the hell is this? He was already turning away. Survived the first night, Calloway. We'll talk on the second. The guard came back. Cassian was gone down the corridor before I could get my breath. The thing in my hand was small and metal and shaped like a key, and it was still warm from his pocket. I didn't look at it. I curled my fingers tighter, smiled at the hydrant, and let him walk me into the dark. Somebody had been watching me sleep, and I was supposed to walk calmly into a cell and pretend my hands weren't shaking. I closed my fist tighter around the key. The metal had cooled, but the warmth of his pocket lingered like a fingerprint on glass. I pressed my thumbnail into the bow of it hard until the edge bit. Pain was useful. Pain told me which parts of me were still mine. Through here, Calloway. The hydrant guard nudged me through a steel door that opened with a sound like a refrigerator dying. Intake. Fluorescent lights buzzing, a folding table, a woman in a beige uniform with eyes that had clocked out 3 careers ago. Strip? I tilted my head. Wow, dinner first? She didn't blink. Strip, Calloway. I stripped slow, not for show. Slow because my fingers wouldn't go faster and I refused to let her see it. Coat, sweater. The soft blue button-down Damian had bought me in Vermont, back when Vermont meant something. I folded it neatly because if I crumpled it, I was going to cry, and I had a strict no crying in fluorescent lighting policy starting tonight. She tossed me a stack of beige cotton. Pants, shirt, socks that had been washed so many times they felt like paper. I dressed. I tucked the key into the elastic of the pants at the small of my back where the seam was thickest. I had no idea if she'd already searched me with her eyes. I had no idea if she was on someone's payroll. I'd assume yes to both until proven otherwise. Hair. She held out a hand. I sat in the metal chair. She lifted my hair off my neck, careful, almost gentle, and for a stupid second I almost leaned into it because nobody had touched the back of my neck in 9 hours and my body kept forgetting it was supposed to be furious. Then she ran a comb through, checked the roots, and dropped my hair like it had burned her. Clean. Like I was an animal at auction. Wow, the bidding's gonna be wild on this one. Look at his teeth. I gave her my courtroom smile. Tip your stylist. She walked me to a cell. The hallway smelled like industrial coffee and old fear. Most of the cells I passed were dark. A few were lit, and the Omegas inside lifted their heads to look at me as I passed. That was the part that surprised me. Omegas, all of them. Brier Hollow wasn't a state facility at all. It was a private Omega wing somebody had paid extra to keep quiet. One of them, an older man with silver in his hair, met my eyes through the bars. He didn't speak. He just shook his head, once slow. Don't make trouble. Too late, friend. Trouble's already in the building wearing my socks. The hydrant stopped at a door near the end. He keyed it open. The cell inside was cleaner than I expected. A bunk, a sink, a toilet behind a half wall, a window the size of a hardcover book set too high to see out of Calloway. Lights out in 20. The door clanged shut, the lock turned, he walked away. I stood very still until his footsteps faded. Then I slid down the wall, not in the broken way, not yet. I sat with my back to the cold cinder block and pulled my knees up and pressed my forehead against them and let myself breathe. Just breathe. In through the nose, out through the mouth, the way the pack therapist had taught me back, when my biggest problem was nightmares about my mother. My mother, God. She would have walked into this room and started rearranging the furniture. I let myself miss her for exactly 6 seconds. Then I lifted my head, fished the key out of the waistband, and opened my hand. It wasn't a key. It was shaped like one, brass-colored, ridged. But the bow had a hairline seam down the middle. I worked my thumbnail into it. The two halves separated with a soft click, and a thin paper twist fell into my palm. Folded 8 times. Tiny handwriting slanted fast. W, Brier Hollow Staff List, North Wing, names circled, red work for the wife. Don't trust the chaplain, don't drink the tea. The other Omega in 14B is mine, burn this. See, I read it twice. Then a third time because the line the other Omega in 14B is mine did something to my chest I didn't have time to unpack. Mine in what sense? Mine like a sibling. Mine like a spy. Mine like a mate. Cassian Hartwell had layers. I did not have the bandwidth for his layers tonight. I tore the paper into small pieces, chewed them, swallowed them, drank from the sink to chase the taste. Old prison trick. Or so I assumed. I'd literally never been to prison before this evening. I was learning on the job. The key halves I clicked back together and slid up under the metal lip of the bunk frame where the welding was sloppy. Hidden, for now. I lay down on the mattress. It crinkled. Of course it crinkled. I stared at the ceiling and let my mind do the thing I'd been avoiding for 9 hours, Damian. The way his hands had folded in his lap. The way the auburn-haired woman's fingers had stayed on the back of his neck. The way he hadn't looked up, not once. Ren, baby, I've got you, liar. I rolled onto my side. The wall was a foot from my face. I pressed my palm flat against the cinder block because cinder block didn't remember, and I needed something that didn't remember. But the mattress did. A flash. Sharper than the bench. An Omega I didn't know, curled in this same bunk, sobbing without sound into the same crinkling plastic. A guard's shadow at the door. A name whispered into the dark. Hartwell. He said Hartwell. I yanked my hand back, sat up, stared at the bunk like it had bitten me. How many Omegas had slept here before me, terrified of the same family I'd married into? I curled my fingers against my palm. The smile came back. Slower this time. Meaner. Okay, I whispered to the empty cell. Okay, Hartwell. Let's play. Somewhere down the hall, a chapel bell rang once, soft, off schedule. Don't trust the chaplain. I lay back down. I closed my eyes. I didn't sleep. I lay there counting the rust spots on the ceiling vent, counting my own breaths, counting the years between the boy who got married in a snow-white suit at 22 and the man currently rotting in beige cotton at 25. By the time the chapel bell rang a second time, I'd counted enough to know one thing for certain. I wasn't dying in here. The lock clicked at 5 in the morning. Not the morning shift change. Earlier than that. The kind of early where guards make decisions they don't write down. I didn't move. I let my breathing go slow and uneven, the way it goes when a body is genuinely asleep. The cell door hissed open. Boots stopped just inside. Then a voice I knew. Get up, baby. We don't have long. I almost laughed out of pure shock. Baby. He had no right. I opened my eyes. Damian Hartwell was standing in my cell. He looked terrible. That was the first thing my stupid heart noticed. Not the cut of the black coat or the way his shoulders filled the doorframe. The shadows under his eyes. The day's growth on his jaw. The way his right hand was curled into a fist at his side like he was holding on to something he refused to drop. His mouth opened. Nothing came out. I sat up slow. Pulled the thin blanket around my shoulders like it was velvet. Tilted my head. Wow, I said softly. Did you bring the milk? His face flinched. Actual flinched. Like I'd slapped him. Ren. That's my name, you remembered? After yesterday I wasn't sure. Ren, listen to me. No, you listen to me, Your Majesty. I swung my legs off the bunk. My bare feet hit the concrete and the cold ran straight up my spine, but I didn't let it show. You didn't look up. 15 years and you didn't even look up. I couldn't. You couldn't. That's beautiful. Make sure you put that in the vows at your next wedding. He took one step forward. The air pressure changed the way it had with Cassian, but heavier, denser, like weather closing in. His scent hit me before he did. Cedarwood. Smoke. The faint underneath of him that used to make my knees give out on the kitchen floor. I locked my knees. Don't, I said. He stopped. 3 feet away. Close enough that I could see the way his pupils had blown out wide. The way an alpha's eyes do when his omega is in distress and his body knows it before his pride does. They told me you tried to kill me, he said. His voice was wrecked. Low. They had your hair in the kitchen. They had a vial in your drawer. They had a recording of you saying I want him gone. I said that about my dentist, Ren. I had a root canal, Damian. I came home and I said I want him gone, and you married a woman 6 months later because somebody clipped that sentence out of context. His face did something complicated. The kind of expression a man makes when a piece of evidence he's been clinging to for a year suddenly looks small in his hand. 6 weeks, he said, hoarse, not 6 months. I married her 6 weeks after the verdict. The council said the pack needed stability. They said. I stood up. My legs held. Thank God. Tell me, Damian, when did His Majesty start letting other people decide who he sleeps next to? That landed. He took it. He took it standing. I'm here, he said quietly, because I think I made a mistake. The cell went very still. I felt it in my back teeth. The thing every part of me had been screaming for a year and a day. He thinks, he's thinking, he might know. And I felt the second thing right underneath it, sharper than the first. Too late. You think, I repeated, soft. You think you made a mistake, Damian. You're wearing a wedding ring. Whose is that? His hand twitched. He didn't look down at it. Hers, what's her name? Ren, please. What is her name? A long beat. Margaret, he said. I laughed. Not the courtroom laugh. A new one. Quieter. Older. Margaret, of course. Margaret with the auburn hair and the fingers on the back of your neck like she'd done it before. Tell me something, Your Majesty. Did she pour your tea this morning? He didn't answer. I stepped forward. 1 step. Just one. Close enough that I could feel the heat coming off him. Close enough that my body started doing the embarrassing thing it had always done when he was within reach. A low, slow pull in my belly that didn't care about prison cotton or 15 years or another man's ring on his finger. I reached up, slow. I didn't touch him. I let my hand stop an inch from his jaw, the way he used to let his hand stop an inch from mine when we were arguing, and he was trying to remember how to be gentle. You came here to apologize, I said. That's brave of you. Stupid but brave. Ren, I want you to do something for me, Damian. His throat worked. Anything. Go home. His eyes closed. Go home to your Margaret, drink her tea, sleep in our bed. Wear my ring on a chain under your shirt because I know you. I know you didn't throw it away. I know it's there right now. His hand drifted helpless toward his collarbone. I smiled. Mean. Candle bright. And when you're done lying to her the way you lied to me, you come back here. You come back here and you tell me who put that vial in my drawer. Because until you do, Your Majesty, you don't get to call me baby. I let my hand fall. He stood there, he breathed. He didn't move for a long time. Then he reached into his coat, slow, careful, and set something on the bunk beside me. A small velvet pouch, heavy. For the commissary, he said. And for whatever else you need. I don't want your money. It isn't money. He turned. He walked out. The door clanged shut behind him, and the lock turned, and I sat down hard on the bunk, because my legs had finally remembered they were full of nothing. I opened the pouch with shaking fingers. Inside was my mother's wedding ring. The one I'd given Damian on our first anniversary, the one I'd told him to keep safe, because it was the only thing I had left of her, the one that had been in the safe in our bedroom for 3 years. The metal touched my palm, the world cracked open, a flash, sharp. Damian on his knees in our bedroom in the dark, opening the safe with hands that were not steady, lifting the ring out, pressing it to his mouth, whispering one word into the dark, ragged, and broken, Ren. I dropped the ring like it was on fire. It rolled across the concrete and stopped against the wall. The chapel bell faded into the walls. The ring sat against the cinder block, glinting under the fluorescent buzz. My mother's ring. The thing I had pressed into Damian Hartwell's palm on the balcony of our anniversary suite 3 years ago and told him, "Keep this safe, you stubborn man. It's the only piece of her I still have." He'd kept it safe. He'd also let them take me. I stared at it for a long time. Then I crawled off the bunk on my knees because my legs didn't trust me yet, and I picked it up. Slowly, bare fingers. I needed to see what else the ring remembered. The flash came hard. Not Damian this time. Older. The metal had decades in it. A kitchen I knew. Yellow curtains. My mother at the sink humming something off key, her hands in soapy water, a man's voice behind her. Not my father, lower, quieter, Mira. If you keep that boy in this town, the Hartwells will find him. You know what they did to your brother. My mother's hands had stopped moving. She'd whispered, "They won't touch my son." The flash snapped. I sat back on my heels so hard my tailbone hit concrete. My uncle. I had an uncle. I'd never been told about an uncle. My mother had said her whole family was gone, killed in a car accident before I was born, that there was nobody left, that it was just us. She had said it so many times I'd never thought to question it. Why would I? What did the Hartwells do to him? I curled my fingers around the ring until the band cut into my palm. I didn't try for another flash. I couldn't take another one. My head was already swimming, my pulse banging in my temples, and somewhere outside the cell I could hear the faint clank of breakfast carts being wheeled down the corridor. The morning shift was starting. I had to move. I shoved the ring into the seam of my mattress, next to the brass key, and dragged myself up onto the bunk. I was sitting cross-legged, looking very much like a man who had simply slept badly when the cell door clanged open. A different guard this time. Smaller, younger, female, Beta. Her name tag said Reyes. Her eyes flicked once around the room, snagged on the bunk for a fraction of a second, and came back to my face. Calloway. Chapel rotation. Up. Pass. It isn't optional. It is for atheists. She didn't smile. It is for everyone in North Wing on Wednesdays. Up, Calloway. Don't make me write you up on day 2. I got up. Don't trust the chaplain, Cassian's note had said. Of course chapel was mandatory. Of course it was on day 2. Brier Hollow ran on a schedule somebody had designed very carefully, and I was about to walk straight into the part of the schedule that mattered. Reyes cuffed my wrists in front of me. Loose. Not regulation loose. She caught my eye for half a second when she did it. Eyes down in the corridor, she said quietly. And whatever the chaplain offers you, don't drink it. I didn't react. I gave her my brightest beige cotton smile. Roger that, she walked me out. The chapel was small, wooden pews. A stained glass window in the back with a wolf and a moon worked into it because someone somewhere had decided the Omegas of the Hartwell territory needed religion with a brand. 7 other Omegas were already seated. The silver-haired man from last night was at the end of the second row. He didn't look up when I came in, but his shoulders relaxed an inch. The chaplain was at the front, arranging something on a small table. White collar, soft brown hair going gray at the temples. A face I had seen exactly once before in my life. He'd officiated my wedding. Father Owen Bellamy, the Hartwell family, chaplain. My breath hitched. I felt Reyes's hand close around my elbow, steadying me, before I even realized I'd lost my footing. Eyes down, she murmured. Sit, she walked me to a pew in the back she left. Father Bellamy looked up, smiled. The same warm, careful smile he'd given me on the altar 3 years ago, when he'd asked Damian if he took this Omega as his bonded mate, and Damian had said, "I do," with tears in his eyes. "Ren," he said, gentle, "I'm so very glad to see you." I smiled back, glassy, polite. The smile of an Omega who had spent 5 years at Hartwell dinners learning how to lie with his teeth. "Father, what a coincidence." "Not a coincidence at all, son." He came down the aisle. He stopped at my pew. He set a small paper cup of tea on the bench beside me, the steam curling up sweet and herbal and pale. "I requested this assignment the day I heard the verdict. Some sheep wander further than others. I wanted to make sure mine had a shepherd. The other Omegas weren't drinking from cups. They had hymnals. Only me. That's so thoughtful of you, Father. Drink, Ren. It's chamomile. You always loved chamomile." I had never told him I loved chamomile. Damian had. At our engagement dinner, Father Bellamy had laughed and said, "I'll remember that." He had remembered. I picked up the cup. I let the heat sit against my palm. I let the porcelain do what porcelain does, which is hold a memory like a fingerprint. The flash came faster than I was ready for. Father Bellamy in a study I knew, the Hartwell estate study, sliding a folder across a desk. A woman's gloved hand reaching for it, the same gloved hand, her voice light, amused. "Will the dose show on a talk screen?" And Father Bellamy smiling that warm, careful smile, saying, "Not if I bless it first, Lady Hartwell." Lady Hartwell, not Margaret, Lady Hartwell. There was only one woman with that title in the entire pack. Damian's mother, the queen mother of the crown pack. The woman who had hugged me at my own wedding and called me darling and told Damian in front of the cameras that I was exactly the Omega this family needed. The cup almost slipped out of my hand. I caught it. I kept smiling. I lifted it to my lips. I did not drink. I let the rim touch and the steam fog my upper lip, and I pretended to swallow, and I set the cup down with a soft, grateful little sigh. "Thank you, Father. You always know what I need." His eyes searched my face. For one terrible second, I thought he saw through me. Then he patted my hand. Warm, paternal, the same hand that had blessed the poison. "Good boy," he said. "Drink it all." He moved to the next pew. I sat there with my fake empty mouth and my heart hammering, and the queen mother of the Hartwell Pack's voice still ringing in my skull. The silver-haired Omega in the second row turned his head, just barely, and looked back at me. He mouthed 2 words, "Spit." Now, I spat into my sleeve, and the cotton drank it dark. The chapel kept moving. Father Bellamy walked the aisle with his warm, careful smile and his cup of poison and his liar's hands, and I sat very still in my pew and pretended to be the obedient, slightly drowsy Omega he wanted me to be. I let my eyes get heavy. I let my shoulders soften. I let my mouth fall open a 1/4 inch the way a person's does when sedation starts to creep in. I had done amateur theater in high school. Mr. Goodwin had said I was wooden. Mr. Goodwin was about to be vindicated. Father Bellamy passed my pew twice. He smiled at me both times. The second smile lingered. Then the chapel doors opened at the back, and a guard I had never seen before murmured something to Reyes in the doorway, and Reyes came down the aisle, and her hand closed around my elbow. "Calloway, you've been requested for visitation." I let my eyes drift up, slow, glassy. "McKay." She walked me out. She did not let go of my elbow until the chapel door swung shut behind us. The second we were in the corridor, she squeezed once, sharp. "Wake up, Calloway." I dropped the drowsy act in a single breath. Who requested me? He didn't sign in under a name. Charcoal coat or black? Charcoal, Cassian. I exhaled. I had not realized how thinly I'd been holding myself until the breath came out. Reyes walked me through a part of the facility I hadn't seen yet. Past the laundry, past a maintenance corridor that smelled like steam and bleach. She stopped at a small unmarked door, knocked twice, and stepped back. 10 minutes, she said quietly. I'll be at the end of the hall. If you hear me cough, you stop talking and you sit on your hands. She left. The door clicked open from the inside. He was already standing. The room was a janitor's closet that somebody had emptied and dragged a single folding chair into. One bulb overhead, a bucket in the corner, no camera, no microphone I could see, though I assumed there was one I couldn't. Cassian Hartwell looked at me the way a man looks at a frozen lake he isn't sure will hold his weight. You spit it. I lifted my sleeve. The stain hadn't dried. His shoulders went down 1/2 inch. I felt it, that small involuntary unclenching, and I hated how much my own chest answered it. Rise is yours, I said. Rise is her own. I helped her get the job. And the silver-haired Omega. His name is Theo. He is best friend's mate. They sent him here 8 months ago for a crime he didn't commit, so yes, he is mine, in the only way that word means anything to me. The room went quiet. I looked at him. Really looked. He had not slept. The shadows under his eyes were the same shadows Damian had been wearing this morning, except deeper, set in. Years of them. How long have you been working on this? I said. 2 years. 2 years. I knew something was wrong the day Damian introduced me to Margaret. He couldn't look me in the eye. He couldn't say her name without flinching. I went home and I started pulling threads, and the threads went where threads in my family always go. A muscle jumped in his jaw. Up. Your mother, our mother. She's not my anything, Cassian. She tried to make herself yours. That counts for something. I sat down in the folding chair because my legs didn't want to keep me up. Cassian leaned against the door. He kept his arms folded. He kept 3 feet between us. Why did you wait until I was already in here, I said. His eyes closed for half a second. Because I needed her to think she'd won. Because the second I moved, she would have moved faster. Because every plan I made before this one ended with you dead, Ren. And this plan ends with me alive. This plan ends with you free. The bulb buzzed overhead. I looked at my hands. Beige cotton sleeves. My mother's ring was 3 corridors away, hidden in a mattress, humming with the voice of a woman I had not known I'd lost. My fake husband was somewhere in upstate Connecticut grieving in his expensive bedroom. My fake mother-in-law was somewhere drinking tea that hadn't tried to kill her. And the only person who had told me the truth in 3 years was a man I had met for the second time last night. Cassian. Yeah, come here. He didn't move for a beat. Then he did. He walked the 3 feet between us slow, the way you walk toward an animal you don't want to spook. He stopped just in front of the chair. The hem of his charcoal coat brushed my knee. I reached up. I caught the cuff of his sleeve between 2 fingers. I didn't tug, I just held. The flash came soft, a child, small, dark hair. Standing in a marble hallway in pajamas, watching a woman with auburn hair and gloved hands walk a younger boy out of a room. The younger boy was crying. The woman was smiling. The child in the hallway, the one whose memory this was, knew he could not move. The child in the hallway was Cassian, 8 years old, learning for the first time what his mother was. I let go of his cuff. I looked up. She did it to you too. His throat worked. She did it to all of us. Damian forgot. I didn't. Damian forgot. Damian is very good at forgetting things our mother does. It's a survival skill. He didn't choose it. He just got better at it than I did. I sat with that. The cruelty of it, the pity of it, the way it explained, without excusing, every silence Damian had ever offered me at a family dinner. Yeah, I stood up. We were a hand's width apart now. He smelled like rain and cold metal, and faintly, underneath, like something that wasn't cedar, wasn't Damian, was its own thing entirely. Juniper, old paper. Something that made the back of my throat warm in a way I did not have time for. I reached up. I rested my palm flat against the front of his coat, over his heart, and his whole body went still. Thank you, I said. Quiet, for the key, for Freya's, for coming. He breathed in. He breathed out. His hand lifted, slow, careful, and covered mine against his chest. Just covered it. No squeeze, no pull. Don't thank me yet, Ren. I haven't gotten you out. You will. You don't know that. I do. His other hand came up. He didn't touch my face. He touched a single piece of my hair that had fallen across my cheekbone. He tucked it behind my ear with 2 fingers, careful as a man diffusing something, and his fingertips lingered just a breath at my jaw. The bulb buzzed. Down the corridor, far off, Reyes coughed once. Sharp. A warning. Cassian's hand dropped. I stepped back. The door clicked open behind him. He walked out without looking back. I sat down in the folding chair and pressed both hands flat to the seat and felt the entire weight of the last 16 hours land on me at once. Reyes filled the doorway. Calloway. Now. I stood. I followed her into the corridor. We walked 4 steps before she said, low, without looking at me, "Your husband's car is in the visitor lot." I stopped. Damian? He's been sitting in it for an hour. He hasn't come inside. He just sits there. My heart did the thing I had been trying to stop it from doing all day. "He's watching the door," she said. "I think he's waiting to see if anything goes in or out of you that he should know about." She pulled me forward. We rounded the corner toward my cell. The silver-haired Omega Theo was waiting at the bars of his own door. He looked at me as I passed. He said very softly, in a voice that did not match the calm of his face, "Ren, your husband isn't waiting. He's hunting, and he doesn't know it yet." Theo's words followed me down the corridor like a third footstep. Reyes walked me back to my cell. She didn't speak. She unlocked the door, nudged me in, and was halfway to closing it again when she paused, looked once down the hall, and said low, "Calloway, there's a woman at the front gate. Auburn hair." She showed Hartwell credentials. They let her in 3 minutes ago. The door clanged shut. The lock turned. I stood in the middle of the cell and listened to my own heartbeat and tried to remember the last time my life had felt like it had air in it. Margaret here, in Brier Hollow, walking the same corridors I had walked this morning, breathing the same chemical air, getting closer to the cell where her husband's first Omega was standing in beige cotton. Damian was in the parking lot. Margaret was inside the building. That was not a coincidence. I crossed to the bunk in 3 quick steps. I shoved my hand under the mattress seam. The brass key was still there. My mother's ring was still there. I closed my fingers around the ring and shoved it deep into the elastic at the small of my back where the seam was thickest. Then dropped the key back into the lip of the bunk frame, because 2 pieces of contraband in one hiding spot was how amateurs got caught. I stood. I shook out my hands. I lifted my chin. Whatever was about to walk through that door, it was not going to find me sitting down. The footsteps came 30 seconds later. Heels. Expensive ones. The kind that announced themselves on concrete. A guard I had never seen unlocked the cell. Margaret Hartwell stepped through. She was prettier up close. That was the worst part. She had the kind of face that made you want to be kind to her on instinct, soft mouth, soft eyes, a small wing of auburn hair tucked behind one ear in a way that looked accidental but wasn't. She was wearing a cream coat. She had a Hartwell signet on a chain around her neck where a normal wife would wear a pendant. She stopped just inside the door. The guard left. The lock turned again. We were alone. "Wren," she said. "Gentle, like we were old friends. You look thin." I smiled. "And you look married. Funny what a year does." She let the line slide off her like water. She'd practiced. I could see her practicing in the mirror this expression, the soft, sad, understanding one. She was good. Not great, good. I came to apologize. Wow. I know what this looks like. I know you must hate me. I don't hate you, Margaret. I don't know you well enough to hate you. Hate takes time. We could schedule something for Q2. A flicker across her face. There it was. The crack. She tucked it back behind the soft mouth so fast a person who hadn't spent 3 years memorizing the Hartwells would have missed it. "Damian is not himself," she said. "He hasn't been himself since the trial. I came here today because I thought if I could just see you, if I could just tell you that none of us wanted this, that the council pressured him into the marriage, that I was scared too, then maybe we could find a way through it that doesn't hurt him more. He's the Alpha King, Wren. He's my husband, Margaret. Or have you been redecorating the office and forgotten?" She breathed in, she breathed out. She took 2 steps forward. I let her. "I want to make a deal with you," she said. There it was. The whole reason for the cream coat and the practiced sad eyes and the auburn hair tucked back the way Damian used to tuck mine. She had not come to apologize. She had come to bargain. A deal. "The council will reopen your case if I ask them to. I have the votes. I can have you out of here in 90 days. Full pardon, public statement, the whole thing." Her voice was very steady. "All I need is your signature on a bond dissolution. You release Damian from your mating bond, cleanly, permanently. And you sign a non-contact agreement promising never to step inside Hartwell territory again. After that, you go anywhere you want, with money, with my blessing, with his." She actually said with his. I looked at her for a long moment. I felt the laughter come up from somewhere very low. It surprised me when it landed. "Margaret." "Yes, Wren. Did Damian send you in here, or did you come on your own?" The flicker again. Sharper this time. "He doesn't know I'm here. Of course he doesn't. He's sitting in the parking lot right now, isn't he?" Her face did something I will remember for the rest of my life. It went perfectly still. Not blank. Still. The stillness of a woman whose plan had just hit a wall she hadn't seen on the blueprint. "How did you know that?" she said. "Margaret, honey. He's been sitting out there for an hour. Did you really think I wouldn't know? I closed the distance between us. 2 steps. Her perfume was something floral and very expensive, and underneath it, faint, the chemical bite of a scent neutralizer. She had sprayed herself before coming in. She had sprayed herself so that I wouldn't smell whoever she had been with last. I reached up, slow. The way Cassian had reached for my hair. I touched the chain around her neck, just the chain. Just the place where the metal lay against her clavicle. She didn't pull back. She thought she was in control of this room. The flash came so hard I almost lost my balance. Not poison this time. Not gloved hands. Something worse. A hospital room. A small one. Private. A nurse holding a clipboard. Margaret on the bed propped against pillows, her auburn hair sweat damp. Lady Hartwell standing at the foot of the bed in a black coat. 8 weeks along, Your Majesty. Healthy heartbeat. The child is Damian's. And Margaret, exhausted, smiling, whispering, "Tell him after the appeal fails, not before. 8 weeks. I felt the math do itself before I told it to. The trial had ended 14 months ago. The wedding had been 12 months ago. Margaret was 8 weeks pregnant. Right now as we stood here, she was carrying Damian's child. And she had not told him yet. I let go of the chain. My hand fell. I think I smiled. I think I did. I don't fully remember the next 10 seconds because my body went somewhere quieter and let my mouth do the work. "Margaret." "Yes, Wren. Get out. I haven't finished. You have. Get out of my cell. She tilted her head. The soft mouth firmed up. The mask slipped a full inch. For the first time since she'd walked in, I saw what was actually underneath the cream coat. You're gonna sign that paper, Ren, one way or another. You can do it now and walk out with a pardon, or you can do it in 6 months when your friend Cassian is dead in a car accident and there is nobody left in the Hartwell family to defend you. I stopped breathing. She smiled, sad, soft, the one she'd practiced. Think about it, sweetheart. She knocked twice on the door. The guard opened it. She walked out. The lock turned. I stood in the middle of the cell with my mother's ring digging into the small of my back and my husband's unborn child in the cream coat that had just walked away from me, and I felt the floor of my world give out cleanly, without warning, the way floors do in dreams. I sat down on the concrete. I didn't cry. I made a sound I had never made before. Something low. Something that had been waiting in my chest for 15 months. Then I went very, very still. Somewhere in the building, the chapel bell faded. The fourth one. Always 4 when something was about to happen in this building. I sat on the concrete with my back against the bunk and let the sound bleed out of the air. She was pregnant. She was pregnant, and she was here to bargain me out of a marriage, and she had threatened the only Hartwell who had ever told me the truth. And somewhere in the parking lot, the man whose child she was. Carrying was sitting in the dark waiting for something he could not name. I had options. I let myself look at all of them. Option 1, I sign the paper. I take the pardon. I walk out of Brier Hollow in 90 days with money in my pocket and a stamp on my forehead that said, "Do not return," and I let Margaret have the husband and the baby and the empire and the auburn-haired victory she had been building since before I met her. I become a footnote. I survive. I let myself feel that one all the way through, the shape of it, the taste. It tasted like my mother lying about her brother for 25 years to keep me safe. I was not built for footnotes. Option 2, I refuse. I rot here for 14 more years. Cassian dies in a car accident in 6 months. Theo never gets out. The Queen Mother throws another dinner party. Damian finds out about his child from a press release. Margaret wins, slower. That tasted worse. Option 3. I sat with option 3 for a long time. I pressed my palm flat to the concrete. Concrete didn't remember. That was the gift of concrete. I gave myself 30 seconds to sit inside something that didn't have an opinion about me, and then I stood up. The ring was hot against the small of my back, like it had been listening. I walked the cell in slow circles. I let my mind do what it does when it is finally allowed to stop being scared. I thought about the bench in the van and the gloved hand. I thought about Father Bellamy's smile in the chapel. I thought about Lady Hartwell at my wedding telling me I was exactly the omega this family needed. I thought about Cassian's hand covering mine over his heart. I thought about Damian on his knees at the safe in the dark. And I thought about my mother humming over the sink 25 years ago, telling a man whose face I had not seen they won't touch my son. She had been wrong about that, in the end. They had touched me, but she had also been right about one thing. The Hartwells found you eventually. So you had 2 choices. You ran, or you stopped running, and you made them sorry they had bothered to look. I had been running my whole life. I just hadn't known the name of the thing I was running from. I sat down on the bunk. I pulled the key out of the lip of the frame. I twisted it open. The inside was empty now, the paper I'd swallowed long gone, the brass halves waiting like a small, expectant mouth. I needed a pen. I didn't have a pen. I crossed to the sink. There was a single sliver of soap, the kind that came in a plastic wrap with a serial number on it. I unwrapped it. I rubbed it down to a point against the edge of the bunk. Soap on paper would not last, but soap on the inside of brass, pressed and dried, might hold long enough for one person to read it. I sat down. I pressed the soap into the inside of one half of the key. I scratched 2 words into the film. Tell Damian. I closed the key. I turned it once in my fingers. I held it in my palm and let it warm. I knew what I was doing. I was choosing a side that didn't exist yet. I was choosing the man who had failed me over the man who had saved me, because the man who had failed me did not yet know what he was losing. And somebody in this story had to give him the chance to figure it out before it was decided for him, not because he deserved it. Because the child didn't deserve to be born into a family that had already eaten 3 generations of itself. And the only person in this building who knew that child existed was me. I pressed the key against my mouth for 1 second, the way you press a thing you are mailing off to a place you cannot follow. Then I crossed to the cell door. I waited. Reyes came 20 minutes later for the dinner cart. She unlocked. She slid the tray in. She looked at me once, the way she had looked at me in the chapel doorway. I held up the key between 2 fingers. "Cassian," I said, very quiet, tight. Her eyes flicked to the camera in the corner, then back to me. She did not nod. She did not speak. She picked up the key with the same hand she used to pick up the empty dinner tray from the cell next door, slipped it into her sleeve, and stepped back. The door clanged shut. The lock turned. I stood in the middle of the cell and breathed. I had just sent the man I was starting to love a note telling him to give my husband information that would put my husband back in the fight. Cassian was going to be furious. Cassian was going to do it anyway. That was the difference between an alpha who wanted to own me and an alpha who wanted me to win. I sat on the bunk. I ate 2 bites of bread. I left the rest. Somewhere across town, in a charcoal coat in a black car, Damian Hartwell was about to find out that the woman in his bed was 8 weeks pregnant with his child, that his mother had poisoned his husband, that his family chaplain had blessed the dose, and that the Omega he had buried alive in beige cotton had just chosen to hand him back his own life. I lay down on the crinkling mattress. I closed my eyes. For the first time in 15 months, I slept. I dreamed of my mother's kitchen, the yellow curtains, the hum, the soapy hands. She turned from the sink and she looked at me and she smiled the way she used to smile when I came home from school with a bloody nose and a story. "Attaboy," she said. "Now finish it." I woke at 3 a.m. Reyes was at the cell door. She had not opened it. She was standing on the other side of the bars, with her face very close, and her voice was a thread. "Calloway." "Yeah, he read it. He's in the parking lot. He won't come in until you say so." "Damian?" "Both of them." I sat up. Both Hartwell brothers in one parking lot, at 3 a.m, in a private Omega prison run by their mother's chaplain. I smiled in the dark, the candle smile, the mean one, the one I had been growing on the inside of my cheek since the courtroom. "Rise, yeah. Tell Cassian to bring Damian inside, and tell Father Bellamy I'd like a private confession before lights out." She hesitated. "Calloway, lights out was hours ago." "I know." I stood up. I straightened the beige cotton. I pulled my mother's ring out of the waistband and slid it onto my own finger where it belonged. I'm not going to sleep through this part. The cell door opened at 3:47 in the morning. Reyes brought them in one by one. She did it the way she did everything in this building, quietly, without ceremony, like she was simply moving inventory. Cassian first. He stepped inside and his eyes went straight to the ring on my finger before they went to my face. He didn't speak. He took the wall by the door and stayed there. Damian second. He looked at the ring too. His jaw worked. He stayed near the bunk. Margaret third. She had not been told she was coming. Reyes had simply opened her hotel door with Cassian's key and told her to walk. She came in with her cream coat buttoned wrong and her hair flat on one side, and the practiced softness gone from her mouth. Lady Hartwell fourth. She walked in like she had been invited. She had not. Father Bellamy fifth. He was the one Reyes had to push. 6 people in a cell built for one. Nobody sat down. There was nowhere to sit. I leaned against the cinder block with my hands folded loose in front of me, and I let the silence do the first minute of work. "Father," I said soft, "could I borrow your rosary?" He blinked. He looked at Lady Hartwell. She did not move. He pulled the rosary off his neck slowly and held it out across the small space between us. I closed my hand around the beads. The flash came clean, bright, sharper than any I had taken before, because I was not afraid of it anymore. Father Bellamy at Lady Hartwell's desk. The folder, the vial, the blessing. Not if I bless it first. The 2 of them laughing softly together. I let the rosary drop into my palm. I looked up. "You blessed it," I said. Father Bellamy's color left him in one slow wave. "I beg your pardon. You blessed the poison so it wouldn't show on the talk screen. Did the seminary teach you that, or was it improvised?" Damian's head turned very slowly, toward his mother. I did not look at him yet. I had a sequence. I held out my hand to Lady Hartwell. "Your ring, please." She smiled. The same smile from my wedding. "Wren, sweetheart. This is unbecoming." "Your ring." Cassian stepped off the wall. She took the ring off. I took it. I held it. The flash came so easily I almost laughed at how long I had been afraid of my own gift. Lady Hartwell at a hospital window, looking down at a younger version of Damian holding a newborn that was not Margaret's child. A different woman. Auburn-haired too died older. Replace her. The first one is sentimental. The second one will be useful. I dropped the ring back into her palm. "You replaced his first wife too," I said. "Before me, before Margaret. She wasn't sentimental enough. She had a daughter you didn't approve of. Where is she now, Lady Hartwell?" The silence in the cell went somewhere new. Damian's voice, when it came, was not loud. It was the quietest thing in the room. "What did you do to Eleanor?" Lady Hartwell's smile did not move, but her hand closed around the ring so hard the band cut her thumb. "Eleanor walked away, my love. You know that. What did you do to Eleanor?" Margaret was crying, not loudly. The cream coat was shaking. She had one hand on her stomach, and she didn't seem to know she was doing it. I turned to her. "Margaret, please, show him the ultrasound." She gasped, wet, broken. "Show him, Margaret. He has the right to know before his mother decides whether to keep this one." She fumbled in her coat pocket. Her hands were not working. She pulled out a small folded paper. She held it out to Damian with both hands like a child handing over a broken thing. He took it, he opened it. He did not make a sound. He looked at his mother. He looked at me. His knees almost went. Cassian caught his elbow without looking, the way a brother catches a brother, automatic ancient. "Ren," Damian said, "don't." "Ren, don't, Damian, not yet. You don't get to yet." I crossed the cell. I stopped in front of him. I was a head shorter and barefoot in beige cotton, and I had never in my life felt taller. I put one hand against his chest, over the chain under his shirt, over my ring he was still wearing where nobody could see. "You buried me alive and still expected me to come back soft," I said. His eyes closed. "You called me guilty before you ever asked if I was hurt. Your mother poisoned your tea and let you blame me. Your chaplain blessed the dose. Your second wife is carrying your child and was going to tell you after my appeal failed so the baby would have no rival. I let my hand fall. Your family has been eating itself for 3 generations, Hartwell, and the only person in this cell who didn't take a bite was the one you put in chains." He breathed in. He breathed out. He went down onto one knee on the concrete, not theatrically, not for the cameras that were not there, just because his body could not hold him up. "Ren, tell me what you want, anything. Tell me and it's done." I looked at him for a long time. I looked at Cassian against the wall, watching me with eyes that had decided something a long time ago and were only waiting for me to catch up. I looked at Margaret with her hand on her stomach, ruined and small and 24 years old and somebody's pawn before she had ever been somebody's wife. I looked at Lady Hartwell, who was already calculating her next move. I looked at Father Bellamy, who had started to weep. "I want 3 things," I said. "I want my pardon, signed by the council, public by morning. I want your mother and your chaplain in the cell I just slept in by sunrise. And I want the bond between us untouched." Damian's head came up. "Untouched. I'm not releasing you, Damian. I'm not letting her have you. I'm not letting Margaret raise that baby alone in your house. I am going to be in that child's life, as the omega of the crown pack, as your husband. And you are going to spend the rest of yours earning back the right to call me by my first name." His hand lifted toward mine. Stopped, asked. I let him take it. The bond, the one I had felt snap in the courtroom, did not heal. Bonds don't heal. They scar. The scar tightened in my chest like a closing door, and I let it. I turned my head toward Cassian. "You stood beside me when nobody else would," I said. "I won't forget it. I don't know yet what I owe you. But I'm telling you in this room, in front of everyone, that whatever it is, you'll have it. In my own time, on my own terms." He smiled, slow, the first real one I had seen from him. "Take your time, Ren." Reyes opened the cell door from the outside. I walked out first. Damian followed. Cassian followed. Lady Hartwell did not. Father Bellamy did not. Margaret was led, gently by Reyes, in a different direction, toward a room I would visit later. The corridor was warm. The fluorescents had been turned down. Somebody had brought a coat for my shoulders. The chapel bell did not ring. Thank you for staying until the very end of this story. If this one stayed with you, the next one will hit even deeper. Don't miss what's coming next. Subscribe now. The next story drops soon.